Hello?
Oh, yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Hello?
Is this Mrs. Dorothy Letterman?
That's right, Dorothy.
Yes, it is. Who's this?
Are you the mother of David Letterman who does Late Night on NBC?
For 30 years, one desk in Burbank decided who mattered in American entertainment. If your name was attached to The Tonight Show starring Johnny Carson, doors opened that had been closed to you for years. But if Johnny decided you didn't belong anymore, those same doors slammed shut, and they stayed shut for good. No press release. No dramatic on-air announcement. Just silence, and an invitation that never came again. Today we're looking at the stars who crossed an invisible line with Johnny Carson and paid for it for the rest of their careers. To understand how devastating a Carson blacklist could be, you have to understand what The Tonight Show represented at its peak. This wasn't just another program competing for attention in a crowded marketplace. For most of the 1960s, 70s, and 80s, it was appointment viewing for tens of millions of Americans every single night. A stand-up comedian could do 5 minutes on that stage and wake up the next morning as a household name. A movie star promoting a film could turn a forgettable project into a box office hit just by being charming for 8 minutes next to Johnny's desk. And then there was the wave. If you finished your stand-up set and Johnny waved you over to sit on the couch, that was it. That gesture alone could change the trajectory of an entire career. Performers talked about it like a rite of passage, almost a blessing from a higher power. Without it, you were just another comic who had a decent set. With it, you were somebody Johnny Carson personally vouched for in front of the whole country. That kind of influence doesn't come without a cost, though. When one man's approval can make you, his disapproval can unmake you just as fast. And over 3 decades, several people found that out in ways they never saw coming. Impressionists were a staple of late-night television, and one of the best in the business built a career out of nailing the voices and mannerisms of famous people. For years, that included an impression of Johnny himself, something Carson reportedly tolerated with good humor at first. A little gentle ribbing from a respected colleague was part of the game. But according to people who worked around the show, there's a difference between a one-time bit and a running joke that starts to feel like it's chipping away at someone's image, night after night, on other people's shows. The official explanation given at the time was that the comedian's material had simply gone stale and wasn't a fit for the show anymore. Nobody close to the situation really believed that was the full story. The bookings quietly stopped, and they never started again. A few years later, a different comedian found himself in a strikingly similar situation, though the circumstances were almost the opposite. While promoting a hit comedy film, this performer did a dead-on impression of Carson's mannerisms, the pauses, the smirk, the way he'd glance at the camera. The audience loved it. It was the kind of impression that, in different hands, might have even amused Johnny. It didn't. According to accounts from people connected to the production, Carson wasn't pleased, though he never said so publicly. There was no confrontation, no on-air dig, nothing the audience at home could have picked up on. Just a quiet shift. The comedian, who had been a rising star with momentum building toward a regular spot on the show, never appeared again. No explanation was ever given, and none was ever asked for, because by then, everyone behind the scenes understood how this worked. You didn't get an apology tour or a chance to make it right. You just stopped getting the call. Perhaps no story captures the brutal finality of a Carson exile better than what happened to one of his closest collaborators, a comedian he had personally championed for years. Back when she was struggling to get noticed in comedy clubs, dismissed by industry gatekeepers as too old, too sharp, too much, Carson saw something in her that nobody else seemed to. He put her on his show, gave her a national platform, and told the audience, in essence, that they were going to be hearing a lot more from this woman. He wasn't wrong. Overnight, doors opened that had been closed for a decade. From there, the relationship deepened. She became a writer for the show. She became his most trusted guest host, the person he'd call on when he needed a night off, knowing the show was in safe hands. To outsiders, it looked like the closest thing to a mentorship Hollywood had ever produced, 2 comedic minds who genuinely respected each other. Then came an opportunity that would change everything. A new network, hungry to establish itself, offered her the chance to host her own late-night show, going head-to-head with the very program that had made her famous. It was historic. It would have made her the first woman to host a major late-night program in American television. She agonized over the decision. By her own later accounts, she desperately didn't want to hurt the man who had given her everything. But she'd also been quietly told, through back channels, that there was no future for her at The Tonight Show once Carson eventually stepped away. The network had no plans to consider her. So she took the deal. What she didn't do, according to people close to both of them, was tell Carson herself before the news broke publicly. He found out the way everyone else did, through industry gossip and trade reports. And from that moment, something in their relationship simply ended. There was no shouting match, no public falling out captured by photographers. Carson reportedly stopped taking her calls entirely. Letters she sent over the following years went unanswered. The silence wasn't an accident, it was the point. To him, this wasn't about competition or business. It was about loyalty, and in his mind, she had chosen a network over him without so much as a conversation first. The fallout extended further than just her. Anyone who appeared on her new show found themselves quietly unwelcome on Carson's as well, a ripple effect that reportedly strained relationships across the industry for years. In interviews given long after Carson's death, she described him as the single most important person in her career, and admitted she wrote to him every year hoping for some kind of reconciliation that never came. When Carson passed away in 2005, she said the grief wasn't really about losing a television legend the world had lost. It was about losing a mentor she'd never gotten the chance to make peace with. Not every fallout was rooted in betrayal or rivalry. Sometimes it came down to one impulsive decision made in the heat of a live broadcast. One comedian, known for an unpredictable, almost chaotic energy on stage, took that energy too far during a guest appearance. In the middle of a bit, he set fire to the chair he'd been sitting in, live, on national television. Whatever the intention behind it, the moment was treated as an unforgivable breach of decorum by the network and the show's leadership. The consequences went well beyond a ban from the program. He was arrested, charged with arson, and ordered to pay thousands of dollars in fines and restitution for the damaged furniture. As part of his sentence, he was required to participate in public service announcements promoting fire safety. He never set foot on that stage again, and for years afterward, that single moment overshadowed an otherwise respected career in comedy. Not everyone who disappeared from Carson's stage did something scandalous or defiant. Some simply made an honest mistake at the wrong moment. One young comedian, still early in his career and eager to make an impression, brought an unplanned prop onto the stage during his appearance, a large stuffed animal meant to get an easy laugh. It wasn't cleared with producers beforehand. It wasn't part of the rehearsed bit. It was, by most accounts, a harmless attempt at spontaneity. But Carson had a well-known aversion to surprises during his show, especially ones that disrupted the carefully managed rhythm he'd spent years perfecting. There was no on-air reaction, no visible irritation that viewers at home would have noticed. But the comedian was never invited back. No explanation was given. The silence itself was the message, and everyone around the show understood exactly what it meant. One of the more sobering stories involves a talented performer who used her appearance on the show to speak candidly about racism within the entertainment industry, sharing experiences that few black performers felt safe discussing publicly at the time. It was an honest, vulnerable moment, the kind of conversation that, decades later, would be celebrated as brave and necessary. But according to people who worked on the show during that era, the topic was considered too heavy, too uncomfortable for the format Carson had built his show around. She never received another invitation. Whether that decision came from Carson directly or from network pressure around him, the result was the same: a voice that deserved to be heard was quietly shut out of one of the biggest platforms in the country. Most of Carson's fallouts happened behind closed doors, but one dispute became, in its own subtle way, very public, even if most viewers at the time had no idea what was really going on. A popular Las Vegas entertainer, who had appeared on the show many times and seemed to have a genuinely warm relationship with Carson, made a business move in the early 1980s that put him in direct competition with Carson for ownership stakes in a major Las Vegas hotel. To the entertainer, it was simply business, an opportunity any savvy investor would pursue. To Carson, it apparently felt like something closer to a personal betrayal. Rather than confront the issue directly, Carson did what he did best: he turned it into material. Night after night, his monologue included pointed jokes about the entertainer, his appearance, his lifestyle, his personality. What started as standard late-night ribbing began to feel, to those watching closely, like something with a sharper edge underneath the laughs. Eventually, the entertainer had enough. According to multiple accounts, he went to the studio in person and confronted Carson directly, asking him to stop. The jokes did stop after that. But so did everything else. The entertainer was never invited back to the show again, not for an interview, not for a musical performance, nothing. Whatever friendship had existed between them simply evaporated, and it never came back. What made all of this possible wasn't cruelty for its own sake. By most accounts, Carson was a deeply private man who guarded his personal life fiercely, someone who could be warm and generous on camera while keeping nearly everyone at arm's length off of it. He didn't enjoy confrontation, and he rarely engaged in it directly. Instead, his displeasure showed up as absence, as silence, as a name that simply stopped coming up. That same instinct shaped his personal life too. He was married 4 times, and each marriage, by his own admission in later years, was complicated by the pressures of fame, long hours, and a man who found it easier to perform warmth than to live inside it. His relationship with his son Rick was famously strained for years, and when Rick died in a car accident in 1991, those who knew Carson said something in him changed permanently. When Carson retired in 1992, he didn't linger. He didn't do a farewell tour or a string of nostalgic interviews. He moved to Malibu, spent his time on his boat, and largely disappeared from public life until his death from emphysema in 2005. For 30 years, Johnny Carson shaped American culture in ways that are still visible every single night on late-night television. The format he perfected, the monologue, the desk, the celebrity interviews, the easy charm, became the template every host who came after him would follow in one form or another. But that same control and precision that made him a broadcasting legend also made him capable of erasing people from his world without ever raising his voice. For the performers caught on the wrong side of that silence, the cost wasn't just a missed appearance. It was years of bookings that never came, doors that quietly closed, and careers that never